Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce have only been married for weeks, but people are already questioning whether she regrets it. From Travis's comments about their wedding to security problems and drama with his teammates, their newlywed life hasn't exactly been smooth, and one moment really got people talking. Let's get into it. Travis Kelce walked into training camp on Wednesday, August 12th, and reporters were waiting. This was his first time speaking to media since he married Taylor Swift, and everybody wanted to know what he'd say about it. He didn't disappoint at first. Kelce said in a press conference following the Kansas City Chiefs training camp practice that it was a fun offseason, calling the wedding the best night of his life, and thanking everyone who came out and celebrated with them. That's the kind of quote you'd expect. Warm, grateful, normal newlywed stuff. But then came the turn. Kelce added that was about all he really got from that night, calling it a crazy night full of a lot of celebration, before saying, "But it's football, baby." 4 words. That's all it took. Within hours, the clip was everywhere, and the replies underneath it were brutal. One woman, Tiffany Parker, posted that a guy who can't even enjoy his wedding without immediately jumping to football is exactly the reason average men like him, or why women don't bother anymore. Her post picked up thousands of views. Then came Alyssa Rain, who called it embarrassing how fast Kelce went from a wedding to talking football, baby, and asked why guys always pull this kind of thing. Stacy, another user, wrote that guys who bring up football right after hyping up their wedding night are exactly why women lose interest fast. And it kept going. Chloe posted that the guy truly can't quit pushing football, even after his own wedding night, and joked that average dudes like him are why relationships fall apart quickly. Even the men weren't fully on his side. Richard Cox III took a different angle entirely, arguing that the best night of anyone's life should be winning the Super Bowl, because that's what you actually work your whole life for, and calling the current generation soft and distracted for making a wedding night the highlight instead. So here's a guy who just married one of the most famous women on the planet, in the most talked about wedding of the decade, and the internet's first reaction wasn't celebration. It was a pile-on questioning whether he even wanted to be there in the first place. Now, to be fair to Kelce, he didn't stop at football, baby. He kept talking, and some of what he said afterward actually reinforced the idea that the wedding meant something to him. He brought up the venue itself, telling reporters he'd always imagined himself walking into Madison Square Garden for a playoff game when the Knicks were rolling, and instead his wife got there first while he was stuck in training camp. That was reportedly the first time he'd used the word wife in public. He called it his childhood dream to get married inside what he described as the Mecca of all sports venues, and even threw in a joke about the air conditioning, working overtime that weekend. But none of that made the rounds the way football, baby did. That phrase was the soundbite. That's what got clipped, captioned, and blasted across timelines. And once it hit that stage, the story stopped being about a tight end reminiscing on his wedding and became about whether Taylor Swift married a guy who couldn't wait to get back to his day job. It's worth remembering how much weight this wedding was already carrying before Kelce even opened his mouth at that podium. This wasn't some quiet courthouse ceremony. The 2-day wedding celebration at Madison Square Garden was said to include more than 1,000 guests. The pair had married on July 3, 2026, in what was described as a private ceremony at Madison Square Garden in Manhattan, New York City. The scale of it turned every follow-up comment from either of them into a headline. So when Kelce's first real answer about the night boiled down to 4 words about football, it landed like a gut punch to anyone already primed to read tension into this relationship. And that's really the emotional core of why this story took off the way it did. People weren't just annoyed at a comment. They were reacting to what they saw as a familiar pattern, a guy checking a box on the biggest night of his partner's life, and then mentally clocking out toward his job the second the cameras turned off. Whether or not that's a fair read of what Kelce meant, it's the read that spread. And once thousands of people believe something, it starts to feel like the truth, regardless of what actually happened in that press room. What makes it messier is the timing. This wasn't some random Tuesday interview months after the fact. The Kansas City Chiefs star was asked about his eventful offseason on Wednesday, August 12, roughly 6 weeks after marrying Swift at a star-studded wedding at Madison Square Garden on July 3. 6 weeks. That's not a lot of runway between best night of my life and back to football, baby. For a lot of viewers, that gap felt too short. It read less like a guy who'd processed the moment and more like someone who was already done thinking about it. So that's the hook. That's the 4-word sentence that launched 1,000 hot takes and got people asking whether Taylor Swift already regrets saying "I do." But to understand whether there's anything real underneath the noise, you have to go back further, back to how this relationship even got to the altar, and what's actually been happening behind the scenes since the vows were exchanged, to understand why one throwaway line at a podium could spiral into, does she regret it? You have to understand how much pressure this relationship has been under from the very beginning. Every single step of it happened in public, under a microscope, with millions of people treating it like their own personal soap opera. The pair confirmed their relationship in September 2023, and after 2 years of dating, they became engaged in August 2025 when Kelce proposed to Swift at a garden in Lee's Summit, Missouri. The proposal itself became a cultural event on its own. Their engagement announcement on Instagram became one of the most liked posts on the platform, and their nuptials generated extensive press coverage. We're talking about a post that pulled in tens of millions of likes within days. Kelce didn't hide how he felt about it either. Speaking on his podcast right after the news broke, he admitted it had been fun, telling everybody who he was going to spend the rest of his life with, and said he still got giddy watching the internet lose its mind over it. That doesn't sound like a guy dragging his feet toward marriage. That sounds like a guy who wanted this. He even opened up about the emotional side of the actual proposal moment. Speaking to a sports commentator, he admitted there were a few tears involved, and described himself as an emotional guy when it came to moments like that. For a player known for talking trash and hyping up crowds, that's a different side of him entirely. The vulnerable version, not the football baby version. Then came the caption that basically wrote its own headline. The post featured a carousel of photos of the couple, which was captioned by "Your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married." Playful, self-aware. It leaned into exactly the dynamic that made this couple so fascinating to outsiders. In the first place, the global pop star and the football player, an unlikely pairing that somehow just worked. From there, the wedding planning turned into its own extended media event. Reports bounced around for months about where and when it would happen. At one stage, outlets were reporting a summer date in Rhode Island. It was reported that the couple would be getting married on June 13, 2026, at Ocean House, a 5-star hotel in Watch Hill, Rhode Island. There was even a story that multiple sources told Page Six, the singer-songwriter, was looking forward to marrying her fiancé at Ocean House, and that while booking the venue, she learned another couple was marrying there the same day, so she allegedly made an offer to secure it for herself. None of that ended up being how it actually played out. The wedding shifted, the location changed, and eventually the real venue was locked in, as somewhere far bigger and far more public than a coastal hotel. Some reports even claimed the couple were set to wed in June, tied to Swift's lucky number 13, a detail her fans had tracked across her career for years. That number obsession is real. She was born on the 13th, and fans have spent over a decade hunting for the number in everything she does. But the actual date landed on July 3rd instead, at Madison Square Garden, a venue choice that would go on to fuel plenty of its own controversy. Once the actual ceremony happened, the details that came out painted a picture of a couple who were, by every visible account, completely happy. A representative for Swift confirmed to ABC News that the two wed in a ceremony, officiated by actor and comedian Adam Sandler, with Swift's brother Austin serving as her man of honor, and Kelce's brother Jason serving as best man, the only two members of the wedding party. Guests described the ceremony as personal and intimate, with the couple exchanging self-written vows, and Stevie Nicks performing, while the pair skipped a traditional lineup of bridesmaids and groomsmen. People magazine's editor even previewed just how big the production side of things would be. People magazine's editor-in-chief told CBS Mornings that it was going to be an absolute, spectacular blowout, noting that according to a source, the venue didn't look anything like itself inside because it had been completely transformed, and by all accounts, that transformation worked. Inside the room, insiders described the couple as glowing. A source told People magazine that Swift and Kelce were beaming throughout the celebration, adding that a huge smile never left either of their faces. That's the version of events that makes "Does she regret it?" feel like a strange question to even ask. Everything about the run-up to the wedding and the day itself points to two people who chose each other on purpose, who planned this for months, who cried during the proposal and beamed through the ceremony. There was no sign in any of that of hesitation, which is exactly why the football baby moment cut through the way it did. It landed on top of a story that had, up to that point, been almost aggressively wholesome. People had spent 2 years watching this couple build toward a storybook wedding. So when the first real public comment afterward sounded even a little bit dismissive, it hit differently than it would have for any other celebrity couple. The gap between the fairy tale buildup and one flippant sentence at a podium is exactly what let the doubt creep in. And that doubt didn't stay contained to strangers on the internet reacting to a soundbite, because behind the scenes there were other threads already pulling at the edges of this marriage. Pressure that had nothing to do with football schedules and everything to do with what it actually means to marry someone as famous as Taylor Swift. If the football baby line was the headline, the real story running underneath it for weeks had been about something heavier. How hard it's apparently been for Travis Kelce to adjust to life as the husband of one of the most watched women on the planet. This didn't come from strangers speculating. It came from his own brother. Jason Kelce, appearing on the Ross Tucker Football podcast, opened up about how much life has changed since Travis and Taylor got together, revealing that he himself now travels with a bodyguard because of how much the family's profile has shifted. Marrying someone like Taylor Swift comes with significant perks, but it also brings considerable challenges. For one, being with the billionaire pop star means a total loss of privacy, and it seems her husband and his family are already struggling with this new reality. With Jason Kelce revealing he now travels with a bodyguard because life has changed so much since Travis and Swift got together. That's not a small detail. That's Travis Kelce's own brother on a podcast describing the family as struggling. And the reporting around that struggle got specific. Jason's comments came after a Hollywood insider reported that his younger brother was struggling with Swift's intense security measures, with a source describing Taylor's life as operating like a military operation. Armored SUVs, armed guards, advanced teams, private entrances, constant surveillance, and noting that while Travis respects why it's necessary, it's still shocking to him sometimes, because he wants to be the one protecting her, and it's a strange feeling when highly trained security teams are always 10 steps ahead of you. Think about what that actually describes. A 3-time Super Bowl champion, a guy used to being the biggest, most dominant presence in any room he walks into, suddenly finding himself outpaced by a private security detail every time he steps outside with his wife. That's an identity adjustment, not just a lifestyle one. And it didn't stop after the wedding either. Later that same month, a separate source reported that Kelce continued to fight with Swift's security detail as he tried to assert himself as her protector. So this wasn't a one-time adjustment period that resolved itself once the vows were said. It was an ongoing tension, weeks into the marriage, between a guy who sees himself as the protector in the relationship and a security operation that's been running long before he ever entered the picture. But here's the thing, even in the middle of describing all that strain, Jason's own reporting made clear this wasn't pointed at the marriage falling apart. At their New York City wedding, Kelce reportedly moved Swift to tears by vowing always to protect her. That's a guy who at the altar made his role as her protector part of his actual vows. The friction with the security team isn't a sign he doesn't want that role. If anything, it's a sign he wants it too much and is running into the reality that Taylor Swift's life comes with layers of protection that were built long before he arrived. Then there was the guest list drama, which added a completely different kind of pressure. This wasn't about security. This was about jealousy inside Kelce's own locker room. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce faced backlash and jealousy from some of Kelce's teammates over their wedding guest list and invitations. Reports described current Chiefs players venting in group chats about who did and didn't make the cut. A few retired athletes even publicly shared their frustrations after failing to land an invitation to the star-studded wedding, while some of Kelce's current teammates reportedly took the trash talk straight to multiple group chats of Kansas City Chiefs players. That kind of thing matters more than it might seem on the surface. Travis Kelce doesn't just go home to his wife after the cameras turn off. He goes back into a locker room with the same guys who were reportedly grumbling about the guest list behind his back. That's an awkward dynamic to walk into every single day at training camp. And it's the kind of thing that can wear on a guy, even if he never says a word about it publicly. And it clearly did wear on them. The newlywed couple was reportedly disheartened by the negative remarks and alleged trash talking from Kelce's teammates over their guest list and invitations. Disheartened. Not a small word. That's a couple who just had what was supposed to be the best night of their lives, immediately having to deal with people close to them picking it apart. Another report described it in even sharper terms, quoting a source close to the couple, who said they were finding it exhausting, keeping up with all the rumors and mischief being made about them, and that wasting time on that kind of thing wasn't pleasant, especially while trying to enjoy their first days as husband and wife. That's about as direct a description of post-wedding stress as you're going to get from an insider source. And notice, it's not about Travis and Taylor being unhappy with each other. It's about everyone around them making the aftermath harder than it needed to be. The one bright spot in all of it, according to that same reporting, was attending a former teammate's wedding shortly after their own. The couple attended the wedding of Kelce's former teammate Juju Smith-Schuster and his bride Laura Crook, their first public event as husband and wife, reportedly lifting their spirits after reports that some in Kelce's circle weren't happy about being invited to the wedding but not the rehearsal dinner. And by most accounts, that night gave them exactly what they needed. Sources said the couple had a wonderful time there, away from their own spotlight for once, just enjoying somebody else's celebration. So by the time Kelce stood at that podium and said, "Football, baby," he wasn't just a guy talking about his job. He was a guy who'd spent 6 weeks getting used to living behind an armored convoy, hearing his own teammates complain about his wedding in group chats, and watching his brother publicly admit the whole family was adjusting to a completely different scale of fame. Maybe that context doesn't excuse the joke landing badly online, but it does explain why a man who just been through all of that might reach instinctively for the one part of his life that's always made sense to him, the game. And that instinct, retreating into football as the one constant, is exactly what the next chapter of this story is about. Because once training camp actually started, all eyes turned to how Kelce looked, how he moved, and whether marriage had changed him in ways that went beyond one throwaway line at a press conference. Once Kelce actually showed up to training camp, the story shifted from what he said to how he looked, and the internet predictably had opinions about that too. Just weeks after tying the knot with Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce reported to Kansas City Chiefs training camp in St. Joseph, Missouri, on Wednesday, July 29, with a source telling Star the 3-time Super Bowl-winning tight end was throwing himself full force back into training because the season starts very soon. That should have been a straightforward story. Veteran player reports to camp, gets back to work. Instead, it turned into a body-shaming pile on the moment footage of him walking onto the field hit social media. Fans were stunned by the star tight end's physique nearly a month after his nuptials to Taylor Swift, and videos of Kelce walking onto the field surfaced online, with fans not holding back in the comments. The jokes were merciless. One fan compared Kelce's physique to his brother, former Philadelphia Eagles star center Jason Kelce. Another said Kelce looked like he was halfway out the door with a beer in his hand. The comparisons to Jason kept coming, and they weren't gentle. One user wrote that Kelce showed up to camp looking like he had his brother's beer belly, while another user responded, "That's Jason Kelce now," with a crying emoji. Someone else even joked he must be adjusting his role on the roster entirely, asking on X, is he playing offensive line this season? There was a wedding buffet joke thrown in, for good measure too, with multiple fans commenting that he seemed to enjoy himself at the wedding buffet. It's the kind of pile-on that happens to athletes all the time, but the timing made it land differently. This wasn't just athlete looks a little out of shape at camp. This was athlete looks a little out of shape at camp weeks after marrying the most famous woman alive, which turned it into another data point for anyone building a case that marriage had somehow softened him. But here's where the story actually complicates that narrative rather than confirming it. Despite all the physique jokes, when Kelce actually walked onto the practice field in front of fans, the reception wasn't hostile at all. Suffice it to say, the people still loved Kelce. He received a lot of cheers and applause from the season ticket holders in attendance. That's not what you'd expect if the public genuinely believed marriage had derailed him. Fans showed up, and fans cheered. And the insider reporting from around that same window painted a picture that flatly contradicted the "he's checked out" theory. A source told Star that the tight end's return to training had been a big change for the newlyweds, explaining that Kelce was throwing himself full force back into training because the season starts very soon, and that he was back to being ultra-disciplined with his diet, sleep schedule, and training, calling it very full-on. Ultra-disciplined. That's the opposite of a guy who's mentally checked out on his career, or on his marriage for that matter. And what about Taylor's side of that adjustment? The reporting there was just as telling. Since Taylor had done it before, she knew what to expect and was totally happy to support him. But there's no doubt it was a big change to go from indulging non-stop to not even having a glass of wine with dinner. The same source went further, describing her as all in with him and wants to be the ultimate support system, so she's cooking him healthy meals. That's not the picture of a woman quietly regretting her decision. That's a woman actively restructuring her own routine around her husband's training schedule. Weeks into the marriage, Kelce himself, in that same training camp press conference that kicked off all the football baby chatter, actually gave one more detail that got buried under the bigger soundbite. He confirmed he was feeling good physically. The four-time AP first-team All-Pro told reporters his body feels good as he goes through training camp, noting he's physically ready to rock and roll in 2026. So even the man at the center of the body-shaming jokes was, in his own words, feeling fine. There was also a bigger professional question hanging over all of this that had nothing to do with Taylor Swift at all: whether Kelce would even keep playing. While Kelce could have easily walked away from football following his marriage, he decided to come back for at least one more year, even though his stats had taken a step back in recent seasons, with the last time he exceeded 1,000 receiving yards and double-digit touchdowns coming back in 2022. That decision to keep grinding through one more training camp, one more season, rather than riding off into a quiet married life, tells you plenty about where his priorities actually sit. He didn't disappear from football after the wedding. He leaned back into it publicly, on purpose, fully aware of how that would look next to headlines about his marriage. So you've got two competing images running side by side. On one hand, an internet pile-on mocking his body and reading his football focus as some kind of red flag for the marriage. On the other, actual sourced reporting describing a disciplined athlete and a supportive wife adjusting their whole home life around his training. Those two versions can't both be the full picture, and the gap between them is exactly what's fueling the bigger question hanging over this entire story. So, does Taylor Swift regret marrying Travis Kelce? Let's line up everything we've actually got, because the picture that emerges is a lot more textured than one viral podium clip suggests. Start with what's genuinely hard about this marriage, because it is real. Travis Kelce's own brother described the family as struggling to adjust to a security operation that operates, in a source's words, like a military machine. Kelce himself has reportedly butted heads with that same security detail more than once, trying to carve out his own role as protector in a life where professionals were already handling that job before he arrived. His teammates gossiped about the guest list behind his back, hard enough that the couple described themselves as disheartened and exhausted by it. And the body comments at training camp, brutal as they were, added yet another layer of public scrutiny onto two people who'd barely had 6 weeks to enjoy being married, before cameras and reporters were back in their faces. That's a lot of pressure to stack onto any relationship, let alone one that plays out with this much attention on it. And it's worth being honest about the fact that none of that pressure has fully gone away. The security friction, according to reporting, continued into the weeks after the wedding, not just during the engagement. The teammate drama didn't resolve itself overnight either. These are ongoing threads, not one-off headlines that got wrapped up neatly. But now put that next to everything else we know. The proposal that reportedly brought Kelce to tears. The engagement post that broke Instagram's like counters. The wedding where insiders described both of them as beaming, unable to stop smiling, all night. The vows where Kelce made Swift cry by promising to always protect her. The exact same instinct that's apparently been causing him friction with her security team, which tells you the tension isn't about him wanting out. It's about him wanting in more than the system currently allows. The reporting that describes Swift restructuring her own routine, cooking him healthy meals, supporting his training schedule because, as a source put it, she's done this before and knows exactly what it takes. And Kelce's own decision to keep playing another season instead of stepping away. A choice that only makes sense if he's still building a life he wants to be present for, football included. Even the football baby moment itself, when you put it back in its full context, rather than the 4-word clip that went viral, reads differently. Before he ever got to football, Kelce spent real time talking about the wedding like it mattered to him, calling it the best night of his life, thanking the people who showed up, and getting emotional about finally standing inside a venue he dreamed about since he was a kid. This time not for a game, but for his own wedding. The football baby line wasn't him dismissing the marriage. It was him doing what athletes do in press conferences, pivoting to the job in front of him, because that's literally what the reporters in that room were there to ask about next. Training camp, the season, his body, his readiness. That doesn't mean the internet's reaction wasn't real, or that the discomfort people expressed wasn't genuine. Tiffany Parker, Alyssa Rain, Stacy, Chloe, and Richard Cox III weren't reacting to nothing. They were reacting to a real pattern they've seen before. In other relationships, other men, other moments where a partner's achievement got overshadowed by someone else's need to get back to what they consider their real job. That pattern is worth naming, and it's worth being uncomfortable about. But recognizing a pattern in a soundbite isn't the same as proving it's what's actually happening inside a specific marriage. What we do have from people with direct access, Jason Kelce, sources close to the couple, reporters who spoke to both camps, is a story about two people adjusting to an enormous new scale of life together. Security convoys, teammates in group chats, cameras waiting outside a Kansas City steakhouse, just to catch a blurry side photo of them having dinner. Pets that, according to one source, are having a harder time adjusting to each other than the humans are. That last detail might be the most telling one in this entire story. Even the people closest to this marriage, joking about it, land on the idea that the animals are struggling more than Taylor and Travis are. There's also the retirement question sitting quietly underneath all of this. Kelce didn't walk away from the game after the wedding, even though he could have. He chose one more season, fully aware that meant handing over weeks of his newlywed life to training camp discipline, diet restrictions, and early mornings. If this marriage was somewhere he wanted to escape from, that's exactly the decision you wouldn't expect. Instead, it looks like a guy trying to close out one chapter of his life properly, before fully stepping into the next one with his wife, by his own account, right there supporting him through it. So where does that leave the four words that started this whole conversation? They leave it looking less like evidence of regret and more like the awkward human reality of two famous people trying to have a normal marriage in an environment that makes normal nearly impossible. The security tension is real. The locker room jealousy is real. The exhaustion sources described is real. But so is the version where a man got emotional proposing, cried again at his own wedding vowing to protect his wife, and chose to spend his first months of marriage getting his body ready for one more football season. With that same wife cooking his meals and cheering him on from the sideline, she's occupied for years now. Neither Taylor Swift nor Travis Kelce has said anything, publicly or through a source, that resembles regret. What they've said, and what the people around them have said, sounds a lot more like two people figuring out how to be married in front of the entire world. Messy moments, viral clips and all.